us for our first Friday social media intermediate session. And I keep still wanting to be like, it is first Friday, not Thursday, even though we only did that the one time. But I feel kind of quite confused by it all. For those of you who don't know us, I'm sure by now you all do. Our first Fridays are hosted by Mike and myself. I'm a digital missioner and comms consultant, and everyone knows Mike. He is in charge of the national comms for the Baptists Together. If you don't know already, or if you're watching this afterwards, our first Fridays are the monthly online gatherings, and all of it can be found. I'm going to try to multitask now and put this in the chat. There we go. So if it's your first time joining us, please do check out the previous recordings and sessions that we've done. We will talk for the first half an hour on a particular topic, and then we will stop the recording and have the second half hour for discussion, conversation, any questions that you want to ask or any ideas that you've had, but literally just open to conversation. If you're here with us, please do comment in the chat, ask questions, but also respond if anyone does ask a question that you know the answer to. And the recordings and any the slides and any handouts will be given afterwards. So today we are going to be looking at social media at intermediate level. So a little bit more advanced, but nothing too I don't know, scary. So hopefully it will all make sense. But if there's anything that you don't quite catch or aren't quite so confident with, again, please do put it in the chat. So let's start. And Mike, I'm handing this over to you now.
Thank you. Thanks, Hannah, and welcome everybody who's here and who's watching on the recording. Good to be with you. And as Hannah has just said, we aren't trying to, don't worry that this says intermediate, and if you still don't feel or class yourself as an intermediate social media person, remember ultimately social media, it is a communication tool, and that's one of the things that we want to sort of get across. It's something there to have in your communications bag, and there to be used as part of a broader sort of communications strategy. As Hannah just put on at the start at our baptist.org.uk/First Friday, you can find our videos from earlier on in the year, and they sort of always overlap. It's always good to come back to, as we've got on the screen there, back to the why, really, of always being really clear about your communications and why you were doing it, and really the plan, the direction of travel that you were doing and going as a church. And key to that is that the gospel is always, and you can go to your Bible and look at this, the gospel is always contextual. Jesus was brilliant at that, of understanding his space, the place he was in, the people he was talking to, where he was, what was appropriate for that time. And as a church, it's sort of really important to understand that. Why are you doing this? Why are you there? What has God called to you, has got you to be called as a church at this time? Personally, at the moment, I'm working with a church, a larger church, as a moderator, and I came on board at the end of November, and we spent the first 4 or 5 months really trying to intentionally listen. And that was both listening internally, externally, having a prayer team, a prayer and listening team, having a together weekend, having surveys going out, really trying to understand. The analogy that I've been using is it's great to have a vision and sort of know what perhaps your longer term vision is, but then wherever the places are, was like the idea of a ship. The idea, where are you going to set sail over a period of time? What are the areas that you need to go and visit? So the church that I'm moderating at, we've sort of seen that areas, communications, so there's sort of the local community is important. So is discipleship, faith in later life. There are areas that we've now identified to think, right, in the next season of the church's calling, there are places that they need to visit. And to be able to do that well, you need to then have a communications plan, a strategy going forward, and to always, if possible, have a listening team, having a team together. I know it's still not a normal thing to have it across our Baptist churches, whether you're not your small, medium or large, of having a communications team or having a listening team, and having those two working together, feeding into the elders and deacons, feeding into the church meetings, so that you're always listening to the community and that context. So you know that what you're doing is going to actually is what God's called you to do, and you're going to do that well. And you'll also be able to understand, who's out there and those people that you need to be in touch with. Just on the bottom of the screen there, we've got the Fire Starters link, which is always useful. Fire Starters have been going now for many years, and they were a group of like-minded Baptists that, they were very different in terms of size, context and story, but nevertheless they realized that together they had got phenomenal stories of bringing people to know Christ. And this wasn't people that had sort of parachuted in from different denominations. These were people that didn't know Christ and now did know Christ. And so they came together several years ago, and they go around the country each year offering their insights, their stories, their understanding of how to communicate well in different contexts. And if you're not aware of Fire Starters, I encourage you to go and have a look at the website. There's books now, there's videos, there's all sorts of things going on there. So sort of moving on, we will go on to thinking a little bit more intentionally about, and I suppose this is a bit more intermediate, because one of the things that we need to do in terms of social media is planning our year. And certainly what we've already looked at across some of our other sessions is we've looked at this before, of how you plan across. Some of these things are sort of quite easy because you know when they are. So you've got Christmas, you've got Easter, we've just had Pentecost. Some of those things are fine. And then you may have little campaigns around them based on what you are planning to do, based upon your listening of what's important to the local community, and you can fit that in with your overall communications and strategy. Some of the bigger things is, if you've got something that sort of sits outside of that, are you giving it enough space to breathe and to make it something that you feel called to be able to do? So one of the things that certainly if you're part of on our mailing list or part of the national social media, you won't have missed, hopefully, that we've got Baptist Assembly in a couple of weeks' time. But in terms of our sort of social media campaign for that started over 6 months ago. And that's been a process of discernment and reaction. But we knew that even if we'd have started telling people about the Baptist Assembly in April, the boat would have long missed. Now, of course, we had a slight complication of it originally being in May, and then the coronation came along and we had to change the date. So it's that whole case of, if you're planning well in advance, that if you do get something that radically changes, like the date or anything like that, you can sort of react, hopefully, appropriately, and you can sort of navigate it around it without confusing your audience out there. But in terms of what we've done in terms of Baptist Assembly, we've done everything from starting off with a save the date, moving into doing videos, different reels. We're now doing countdowns per daily. We've picked out individual content across that. I've also done paid for advertising that if we've got time, we'll go into a little bit more as well. But if not, we'll look at that next month as well. So I think the important thing with anything that you've got with there as Assembly as an example, if you've got something that's really important to you as a church, you've got to give it enough space to let people get on board with it. And that means not only through your own channels, but it includes the other channels that your audience might be interacting with. So those are the local Facebook groups. Those are other spaces in which you may go to that you're part of, that you can tell people about. And that's certainly a strategy that I learned personally during the pandemic, is that I knew that certain groups of people didn't interact with our channels. So in fact, in some cases, they'd be going, why isn't anybody telling me about these things? And that's because I realized they weren't contacting. So in which case, you have to do a Jesus, you have to go out there and you have to go and meet people where they are. And that means that, so it's not only thinking about your own channels, it's about going to other spaces and places as well. And if possible, get the church and the people that you work with on board with sharing and getting into the spaces that they're part of. A lot of the time, a lot of sort of churches and different spaces that you work with, it ends up still being the one person or one or two people who end up just putting everything else on social, and nobody does anything. But if part of your vision and your why and your listening, everybody starts to think, right, well, okay, then I am happy to personally share this with my own sort of friends and family with that. So sort of moving on, I'm just have a look, see if there's anything else that was worth sort of mentioning from that before we go into a little bit more. But yeah, I think, Hannah, I think we'll pass over to you. We're going to have a look at some creating content now.
I realized I didn't include it in the slides. I do have a template of a content plan. If that's helpful, I can share it later on, but just if you kind of like don't know actually how to not format, but put together a content plan, or if you just want something that you can amend and change, because actually there's no point in us providing something and saying you have to do it this way. You need to do it what's best for you and what actually will be, you know, of use to you. But sometimes having a template can be very helpful. That's cool. I will need to dig on my website to find it. I don't have that to hand right now, so I'll share it in later on. So actually creating content. So as Mike's already said, sort of having an idea of what's going on, planning in thinking, right, what have we got coming up? What are the different sort of types of content that we need to be sort of preparing for? In what formats will we deliver them? You know, and actually thinking about what platforms you're going to be on, because actually, if you're going to be creating a lot of, say, YouTube content, your videos need to be actually made in a completely different way, as opposed to if you were making them specifically for Instagram, or more heavily lean towards sort of social media apps where portrait mode is sort of more preferable, whereas actually on YouTube you want it landscape. So really have a think about where you're going to be distributing the content to know actually what you're going to, how you need to be making it. I'm going to sort of talk through how I would do it if I'm doing a poster, but it's going to probably be a little bit harder if I'm not actually showing you, but we can do that either at the second session or another point. I can pre-record some videos of actually how to do it. Anyway, so let's say we're going to be talking about harvest events and service that we're going to be doing, harvest weekend that we're going to be doing at our church. Okay, so actually probably now is quite a good time to be starting to think about it, because I need to have enough time to gather the to create the content, and actually to whether we're printing off posters and stuff like that. So actually now is kind of, June's a good time to be thinking about stuff that's happening kind of September, October time. Doesn't mean you need to do everything for it right now, but actually just starting to think about it. So, okay, so right, we're doing a harvest service and we're going to do a food collection. Okay, so I've got all the key information. Using a tool like Canva, there are others. I just absolutely love Canva. And I know that we've talked about it a lot before on First Fridays, and that the fact that actually churches subject to the actual charity codes going through, because I think that they don't always like it, but for a free tool you can do so many different things in it, and they are constantly updating it, and there's been a lot of AI updates recently. It's quite incredible the things that you can do in it for actually being a relatively easy and affordable tool to have. What I also love in Canva is that there are so many templates and sort of designs and inspirations to use from. You could copy, literally just change the key information and have it the same, or you could change it slightly. So I like going in and just seeing what's going on. So harvest service or harvest, I might look up, or autumn, and seeing what's on there to work from. I think it's always good to start in a poster format, because actually it gives you the sort of the basis of all the things that you're going to need to be creating from. And actually the likelihood is we'll also be creating a poster anyway to print and put on the church platforms, you know, whether that is in your local shops or on the not pin board, but outside notice boards. So I do like working from a poster to begin with. And again, with Canva, you know, actually, I don't quite like that brown color. You know, we're in it's still very green for us and where we live. So actually, we're going to have more kind of like two tones of green, and I'm going to sort of adjust that slightly. And it is fun playing around with colors and sort of different slightly visual stuff. But the most important things to think about are, what is the key information you need to be putting out there? So the name of it, so that people actually know what to expect. The date, the time, the location. I saw a poster recently, a local event, I think it was a car boot sale. It said car boot sale, sort of fairly big. That caught my eye, and I was staring at it for a bit, purely because I was slightly baffled, because it had the date. So the name was really big. The date was sort of quite big. Couldn't find the location anywhere. And I was like, I don't know where this is happening. I want to find out more. And then my husband dragged me away and said I wasn't allowed to go to it. So it didn't really matter anyway. But having the name, the date, you know, the date and time and location as being the biggest things that need to be on there. It doesn't need to be as big as if you're fundraising for an event, or sort of what things people need to bring, or, you know, free coffee, free food. That stuff isn't as important as the things that actually people need to know what's there. Then you can sort of have further information in smaller fonts, or just have it all on sort of, you know, find out more, and then link to a website. Or if you're actually, oh no, I'll go back to that. So if we're saying this is for a poster, and have it fairly clear as where they can find out more information, and if booking is required, how does someone book? It's kind of a bit of a minor thing, but some people probably would disagree. You don't need to include the https://www. Have it as, especially if you've got like a kind of a long church URL, you know, if you're Hallelujah Church London, if you've already got www.hallelujahchurchlondon.co.uk, that is a very long URL for people to have to sort of remember. So actually keep it as simple as possible. If you're on social media platforms, just have the icons. People will know then what they need to be searching for. So that's if it's a poster. If it's a social media graphic that we're making, so we've got our harvest poster right now, I want to make something for Facebook. I'm not going to need to include booking information or website links on the graphic, because actually I can put that within the text content alongside the post. You know, if there's going to be further, you know, not more exciting things, but sort of that additional information of, we're going to have a picnic, we're going to be raising money for this charity, and this charity do all of these really cool things, and these are the things we're looking for if we're looking, you know, if you're wanting to bring something to the harvest donation. But all of that stuff in the Put all of that stuff in the text to go alongside the photo, so that the graphic is as simple as possible, as eye-catching as possible, and then people can look in your text for further information. So often there are sort of posters with all the information, and it's great if it's a poster, again, that's in your shop, but to have it as a social media graphic, it then just does become too much to sort of take in on social media. Also then think about sort of your branding and try to be consistent with it. Doesn't mean you need to have everything in the same colors, but it's always nice to have kind of hints to it, especially if they are kind of frequent events or events that are synonymous with your area, or something that's sort of quite sort of largely community focused, because again, those colors will sort of, you then become associated with that, and it's a great way of kind of building familiarity with sort of your community around you. And have a good church logo. It's lovely to have something, again, Hallelujah Church London. If that was all in the title, and then a very detailed sort of print of the church, that would be very big to put on everything. So actually, whilst it's good to have kind of a main logo, sometimes it can be quite helpful to have HCL and maybe just the outline of it, so that actually it's very simplified, and so that's not taking up, again, all of your kind of, I don't think this is the technical term, eye energy. for looking at looking and trying to grab people's attention. I hope that makes sense. It's really hard to actually just to explain sort of designing without really going into Canva, but that would take us far longer. That I could do a whole session on that. So I hope that's kind of just helped us sort of think about when designing posters. And the other thing with Canva as well is, so you can have your poster done, then it allows you to resize it to the different things that you need. So whether that is you've gone from an A4 poster to go to a square social media graphic and you could then resize it to a email header. And okay, it doesn't sort of format it all perfectly, but actually you've got you've got the things that you need in there, and you can just add or take away stuff, and it just makes it so much easier than trying to work that all out yourself. So I hope that that makes sense. I'm going to pass the fun stuff of copyright over to Mike now.
Thanks, Hannah. And as well, I can a good bit of comms is repetition. So I'm going to say a bit now and say it again in a bit. Is that in 2 weeks' time, well, a week on 2 weeks tomorrow, you can come and meet Hannah and I on site at Telford. We do have legs, and you can come and see us as we do a communications seminar at Telford. And we will, for those that remember Ready Steady Cook, I don't know whether it's still going or not, but we're going to try within an hour to create a brand, a website, and a social media presence, just to show that the tools are not as difficult as people might think. So we'll be doing that, and I think as part of that, Hannah will definitely be looking at Canva, and from that we'll probably make some videos from it. We'll see where things go. Okay, so copyright. This was the darling of the pandemic. Well, one of the darlings of the pandemic. Oh, did I get a lot of questions about this every single day for a period? And that's because when everybody moved online, yeah, churches were using things, and all of the little the little bots in the background were seeing all illegal use of certain, particularly images. So we had an awful lot of churches, of our Baptist churches during the pandemic, who ended up having to sort of, well, the term would be settled out of court, really. They weren't fined, is that representatives of the copyright owners would be saying, here you go, you've used this image without permission, pay us this amount of money, or we'll go to the next stage with that. And it's funny that ended up being a period of time that was very much 2020 into 2021, and then it's largely died off. I've really not had many much questions about copyright since then, but nevertheless, they are still all really valid. Particularly, I mean, again, it's one of those things that from a Christian point of view, it's one of the 10 commandments you can most easily break. The thou shalt not steal is really easily broken when it comes to sort of imagery, music, video. And ultimately, I think if you come at this from a Christian perspective, not from the, oh, well, I'm sure it's fine if I use it, from a Christian perspective, is it right? Do either is it my own work, or do I have permission, or is the owner given permission to use a piece of work? There are loads of places where you can get good images from there. That's it. Unsplash and Pixabay are ones that I always have used for years. They're always really good, and you can use those actually if you really want to, without even acknowledging the creator. Though as good practice, it's always good to say who you've taken this image from. One of the faux pas, as I remember, of 2020 is that people would go onto Google Images, and one of the drop downs was search Creative Commons, which you'd go, okay, well that sort of covers the licensing side of things. Google wasn't that detailed in terms of its licensing exploration when it pulled out those images, and an awful lot of those images ended up being not Creative Commons, and that's where a lot of churches ended up getting caught out with that. Things like Unsplash, Pixabay, great for sort of generic things. Another really good one I've always used, which allows some more contextual photos, perhaps of a certain place or person. is Flickr. So, and that's Flickr with the flickr.com, which has been going for many years now, and that's where photographers from around the world have always presented and put their photos. And you can definitely search for Creative Commons, and that's the term. So you can then look for images that people have given permission with certain, i.e. you can't use them for making money. So if you're using them for not-for-profit, that you're able to use, and that can be really quite helpful. Yes, if you're after a picture of a town or your city, something like that, that you probably wouldn't get on a more generic free image site. Yeah, music is another area where people have been tripped up on, and also sort of understanding how that sort of works. Generally, if you've got your music group doing an interpretation of a copyrighted song, but not using any of the backing track, not using anything of the original, but the band is recreating a song, and then that goes out to say YouTube, you will be fine with that. PRS, the people that licensed the music, have got an agreement with YouTube. And so the agreement is that, yes, you can put your own interpretations of songs onto YouTube. Where it goes wrong is where people, perhaps part of a little visual reflection or any sort of video, that they will use the original track in the background, and that's where you can get tripped up on. Now, sometimes on YouTube, it'll be very quick to say whether or not there's a copyright claim on that. And on some of those, it can be okay. If there's a copyright claim, you can investigate that, and it may just say you can't monetize that video, but the owner is fine with you still using that. If it says, obviously, you can't use it, then you will have to take it down. Otherwise, you'll get a copyright strike. And yeah, you don't want to be getting that. But so music is an area which, I don't know what the latest is. I haven't looked at this coming into today, but yeah, Facebook was another one where, you would end up getting muted on Facebook if you were using original tracks on that. But a bit like image banks, there are lots of places where you can get Creative Commons music with that. Yeah, the YouTube audio library is one which is really good if you're using YouTube, because you know for certain that you won't get brought up on that at all. There's some really good different music banks out there. And so again, it's a bit like image banks. Sound banks, music banks are the same, and sometimes you might want a certain sound, a rippling noise or something like that, which I've often looked at. We've got plenty of different resources on the website. I think as a result of today, I'm going to go back and have a look at the current state of the copyright nation in terms of actual details, but nevertheless, the fundamentals of saying, have you permission to use an image, video, or sound? And if you cannot answer that, then you need to investigate it and check things out. So if you do that, then you're absolutely fine. There's nuances and details and slight changes in how platforms do things. Those things will always change, but nevertheless, follow those things, and you won't go too far wrong. I think we're on to our next bit now. I think, Hannah, on to our scheduling, I think.
Yeah. So as much as beneficial as it is to plan your content in advance and sort of engage in live time with your audiences and with other accounts, scheduling is very, very helpful, especially for those that I imagine most of you are, who are not kind of like the 100% full-time comms managers, but actually you're sort of doing comms alongside other roles, other responsibilities, other commitments in life. So it is not feasible to constantly be on posting live as you come up with the ideas, or as something needs to go out. So scheduling is really helpful. But also it can help with strategy of just thinking, actually, when do we need to be posting this? How are we responding to things going out? How are we engaging with those that are engaging with us? And sort of it just can be helpful of sort of giving you a bit of space to work forward. post in advance or schedule in advance, enough that it sort of gives you a bit of breathing room, but not too far in advance that stuff becomes out of date, you forget what's going up, or that actually you just end up sort of like committing lots of content going out, and then suddenly you've got other things that need to be going out. So yeah, finding the right balance is different for everyone, but also think about cross-platform scheduling. So don't just schedule on, I've got to remember the way around it would work. Schedule on Instagram, and then it will automatically post on Twitter and Facebook and all the other places, because actually your content needs to be different for the different platforms of either the language you're using, the people that you're tagging in. There are some accounts that I see at the moment. Just saw one yesterday and I was like, oh, didn't know that person was on, or that account, I didn't know, I don't think I'm following that account on Facebook. Clicked on it and it took me to Instagram, but I didn't want to be on Instagram, I wanted to be on Facebook. So I think that they'd scheduled it on Instagram and then it had gone out onto Facebook. So it's sort of making sure that you are scheduling and writing and using the appropriate resources or methods for the right platform. In-app scheduling is probably the best, purely because it's just easier to know that that's where they're going out from. And I don't know whether the algorithm actually picks up, but sort of I feel, well, I'm scheduling in Twitter, maybe Elon Musk will sort of, take pity on me and share this a bit more than if I was putting it out through another platform. I don't think that's actually the way it works, but there's just something sometimes about I'll schedule it within the platform. But there are also some awesome tools. Really sad, I had to take Hootsuite out because now they're not they're not doing free accounts anymore, which is a bit of a shame. But Buffer, CoSchedule, Meet Edgar, and Later, I think it's TR, so that might be wrong. That they're sort of all great tools that offer not just scheduling, but a kind of various content management tools alongside that. But Buffer is probably I use the most, and is very easy to navigate around. So if you're just getting started with scheduling, Buffer is really good. And I would also recommend that if you're scheduling something, and especially, so say we're scheduling a month in advance or we're scheduling for the month ahead, I would recommend that kind of every week, just going in and checking what's going out, whether things need to get changed, because especially with the kind of recent national, international stuff that's gone on, you don't want to accidentally schedule something that is actually quite maybe insensitive or inappropriate for sort of national news that's going on. So nothing, you don't have to go in and change everything, but it's always worth just going in sort of once a week and just going, right, what have we got going out? What do we actually need to be sort of amending or changing? But scheduling is great, but just don't post and then never go into the platform because you think all of your work is done. Part of actually being social media is to be social and to engage and interact with your audiences and the people that you follow. Now I'm going to go through this really quickly. Just to expand upon what I said in the last session, your website is your most important place, because it's your land, you own all of it. You don't have to fit in with what other, the other platforms, the type of format or content that they want you to do. Your website is your land. That needs to have everything that mostly everything that someone might want to know about your church, but it not being overwhelming, and it doesn't need to be overly complicated, but having, when do you meet? Where are you? Maybe some frequently asked questions of, is there parking? Is there disability access? Or sort of, what features, what facilities do you accommodate for that? My old church was a sort of old Victorian Church of England. I think I said this before, Church of England church. And there was all steps everywhere. And actually it made it very difficult for us to offer events to those that maybe couldn't walk up steps. So we had to be very clear that actually, unfortunately, it's not, so great if you need to use the loo and you use a wheelchair. But then when we got a ramp in, it was really lovely for us to be able to say, actually, no, we are now, we've got facilities to accommodate for nearly everyone. That was great. Emails. Also, it's a great way to directly talk to your readers, to your community, and you can have a couple different sort of email lists, whether that's your church family exclusively or your community, people who just want to know what's going on. So you need to remember, think about the kind of internal or sort of more personal language as opposed to the sort of public language that you might have for people that maybe don't know you as well. And also let people sign up if you want them to sign up. Like, actually, how easy is it to find out what's going on at the church if everything is done through newsletters or sort of email updates? Then Facebook, so I've not seen it so much lately, but it is a sort of bit of a, was a bit of a thing a while back of churches creating church profiles to then create a page. That's not how sort of Facebook likes you doing it. It's for you personally. You don't have to have anything on that personal profile, but the page is where the sort of the church should be. And that's the sort of the great sort of front lawn way of people finding out what's going on, whereas the groups, and you can have loads of different groups. I think Facebook allows you up to 250. That might have changed. That sort of, it can be more personal. You can have closed groups, so actually it could be just the worship band, it could be the families groups, it could be, I don't know, the gardening team, but you can allow a lot more sort of more, say, intimate, but it's sort of that more kind of like, hey, should we do this week? What do we think about this worship set for sort of, the upcoming season? And Facebook does give you the most amount of features for a platform. Something like Instagram needs to be more visual, so it is that is very much centered on photos, or videos is sort of more where they're wanting to go, of the sort of but they need to be good quality photos. You can put graphics and stuff up as well, but sort of, try to mix it up. Don't have it all just, again, written text graphics. But also utilizing the features such as stories, just to allow that kind of behind the scenes and, hey, we're a normal bunch of people. There's so many different ideas that you can do for the different elements of it. And then YouTube. So you've got videos and lives, and I'm sure sort of everyone kind of, knows how to sort of general stuff of YouTube. But the biggest challenge I see for churches trying to sort of grow YouTube's more in terms of ministry and just being, or mission and ministry, of just being able to kind of like share what they're doing, is not titling things properly. And I know I say this all the time, but no offense, no one cares if it's Hallelujah Church the 29th of April. No one's looking for that. What they want to be seeing is the answers to the questions that people are asking, because YouTube's like second biggest search engine. So they don't want to be, they don't want to see Hallelujah Church London. They want to go, why does death happen? Does God still love me? How to have hope when things feel tough. That's what we should be titling videos, rather than just the name and the date, because that's not what we're searching for. Then also include thumbnails, just to make it a bit more enticing, rather than sort of the same image for the last year. It just gets a little bit boring and unengaging. And there is evidence, there's research showing that those videos generally don't do as well compared to ones that do have kind of changed thumbnails. And also descriptions, link to your other social media platforms, your website. Share who this person is that's preaching. What are they preaching on? What are the, what's the reading and the verses that they're looking at? And then shorts, similar to reels, but I don't need to go on about that. That's like the quickest thing I've ever gone through socials. But it's just go through them. If your church or even you personally have them, it's something like TikTok. It's worth playing around with to see what the opportunities might be. Play around with reels or stories to see how this might work for your church. And actually, the more that you play around, the more ideas you get, the more that you're seeing other people doing it, actually, the more people will engage with you. So I always just say, play around, have fun, and learn from that. And that's me. Over to you, Mike.
Well done, Hannah. Those are the words "have fun" were the ones in my mind as you were going through with that. Otherwise, it can end up feeling like, oh yeah, it's really difficult. This is complicated, and it's not much fun, and it's sucking the life out of me. At the end of the day, this is about communicating well and communicating the gospel in our time and place. And throughout the ages, over the past 2,000 years, everyone's had their own time and place, and that's it. It was all different times, and this is what we've got now. So we're sort of with these things, and we've got the biggest reach we've ever had, and yet it's the most noisiest we've ever been. So it's how we do stand out with all of that. Books that we've got there, just a reminder, we did Hannah mentioned these last month, but these are good books to have a look at, and we'll mention those in the little resources when we send the slides out again. So those are really good. We're sort of big on community as well, so Anna and I certainly try and practice what we try and preach with that. We've got our sort of comms Facebook group, which again I'll pop in the link. I know that we'll get the link here now, but also I'll pop it on the email when I send that out with the video. But yeah, have a look at your own communications at the moment. Is there something that you've got planned or coming up, and we'd love to sort of chat around with it, talk about your plans. Don't anybody think, either sort of with us in the space now or watching this, that you've got to do this in total sort of isolation. I know sometimes it can feel a big thing of sharing it with a group of people. So if that's not something you want to do, but if you just wanted to sort of contact me or contact Hannah, we'd be more than happy to sort of walk with you and just help you explore things. And working as a team and as a comms team and as a board, a set of friends is how you get better. Certainly how we work nationally as a comms team, it's a constant exploration. Somebody will come up with an idea. We've got a culture of saying, it's safe to explore this, but somebody will go, don't like those colours, can't read the font, let's change that up. Okay, then let's try that. So that interaction with each other pretty much 100% of the time leads to something sort of even better than if somebody had just gone and done it on their own. So do get in touch. We'd really like to sort of help and walk with you. And I did say I was going to mention it again, so I will. We have got Baptist Assembly. 2 weeks tomorrow is where you can meet. Well, I'll be there the whole weekend, and I can't remember when you're coming up, but we'll be there the whole weekend. And this, of course, will date our video, but hey ho, it is Baptist Assembly, but we will have something to share there. So if you are there or are coming, do come and say hi, and we'd be more than happy to have a chat about your comms and any other questions you've got. So thank you for that. And I think we're about there. So our next one will be Friday the 7th of July, where we will up the ante even more to the advanced social media stage with that. But don't worry, it won't be too difficult, and it will build on what we've already been looking at these past 2 months. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.